What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Pastor Keenan with my favorite sidekick, Nick. Nick, how you doing today, brother?
Oh, not too bad. Trying to avoid winter as fast as I can.
Well, it's coming, man. It's coming this weekend. If you didn't know it already, shout out to the local police department going on behind us. But either way, if you don't know it, man, this weekend it's coming down. It's going to be like low 40s, something like that for the high, man, and like in the 20s for the lows. So yes, winter is on the way, brother. These flip-flops that I got on right now is not going to be serving a good purpose this weekend, but, you know, I'm going to try to carry the vibe with me for as long as I can, for sure. So we thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Everyday Christian Podcast, and we thank you guys for supporting, man, from all over the nation, all over the world. Thankful for the people who download, who listen on a regular basis, and we thank you for getting the word out, you know, for telling friends and family that, you know, there's something out there that the Everyday Christian can connect to, and, you know, hopefully see the Bible in a different light. So that's what this thing is all about. And if you want to know more about who we are, you can always go to Facebook and just type in Fruition Church, Fruition, Fruition Church. And if not, man, you can always go to YouTube and type in Fruition Church of Hodgenville. We've always got the website, man. The website's where it's at, www.fruitionchurchky.org. That is where everything happens at. That is the hub. That is where the announcements and the wonderful quotes and, you know, everything, the events. I'm trying to think what else, Nick, is on there.
Just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. I mean, like, it is the hub of everything that we do. So if you want to know more about who we are, what we do, where we're at, and what's going on inside of this ministry, www.fruitionchurchky.org. You can always check us out there. And, of course, if you are just tuning in to maybe this episode of the Everyday Christian Podcast, you need to go back and download the other 40-some episodes, right, Nick, that we've had so far, just so you can get caught up. Now, you know, we take the message every week and dissect it, and so, you know, it's you can step in anytime. It's not like, you know, you're like, oh man, they're 40 episodes deep. You know, they're telling a story. No. Like you can jump in on episode 45 and just feel like you've been connected the whole time. So that's what we want you to do. You know, we want you to get connected in, download the episodes, and, you know, just tell your friends about it on top of that. So, Sunday, man, Sunday was a great message, you know, entitled, And It Came to Pass. And it came to pass. And Nick, I talked about how, you know, how wonderful it is to read that phrase, that sentence in the Bible, because whenever you read "and it came to pass," you know that at that moment that whatever people have been praying about or believing for or whatever they requested or even, you know, God's words being fulfilled, you know, that He's made a promise and it's coming to pass, you know, you feel like something is moving and something has happened and something is working together. So anytime you see that phrase "and it came to pass," you know, it's a feel-good moment. You know, I mean, it's a feel-good moment. And, you know, you can relate it to so many different things. But, you know, I'm just thinking in myself, you know, just praying and believing and, you know, for things to happen, you know, whether it's within my family or the ministry or the community or whatever, you know, it's like you always, as a Christian, want those "and it came to pass" moments. You know, you want to see the hand of God work and move, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, again, you know, true, you know, just really almost any everyday person could probably think of those moments in their life, you know, when they finally exited a season of struggle that they've dealt with for a very long period of time. You know, once they finally exited that season and received, you know, the harvest of that season, you know, they're receiving the benefits, they're receiving the outcome, you know, whatever it may be,
right?
You know, of all their hard work and dedication and things like that. You know, I think it's something a lot of people can relate to, is that moment of "it came to pass." You know, it's from a Christian perspective, of course. You know, when you spend a lot of time and effort, you know, praying about something, you know, when that kid finally gets healed, you know, when you finally see that person delivered from an unhealthy relationship, when you finally see that person come to church for the first time you've been inviting for years and years.
Right.
Like, you know, so many different things that you could kind of relate to this. But yeah, I think that's something that we as an everyday Christian strive for, live on. I think that's something that continues to drive us to do what we do. Is for those moments of "it came to pass."
Yep, absolutely, man. And this scripture we're about to read, whenever you might be listening to this, it's one of those moments where it was, the rubber meets the road per se, and, something needed to happen. Something had to happen, and then there's that moment, that phrase in there, and it came to pass. So how good and how faithful God is, 2 Kings chapter 4, let's start with verse 1. Not very many verses right here, but we'll paint this story for you. It says, one day, the wife of a man from the guild of prophets called out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. You well know what a good man he was, devoted to God. And now the man to whom he was in debt is on his way to collect by taking my 2 children as slaves." And Elijah said, "I wonder how I can be of help. Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Nothing," she said. "Well, I do have a little oil." "Here's what you do," said Elisha. "Go up and down the street and borrow jugs and bowls from all your neighbors, and not just a few, all you can get. And then come home and lock the door behind you, you and your sons. Pour oil into each container, and when each is full, set it aside." She did what he said. She locked the door behind her and her sons. And it came to pass, as they brought the containers to her, she filled them. And when all the jugs and bowls were full, she said to one of her sons, "Another jug, please." And he said, "That's it. There are no more jugs." And then the oil stopped. And she went and told the story to the man of God. And he said, "Go sell the oil and make good on your debts. Live both you and your sons on what's left." Now, Nick, that is it's just a snippet. That's a scenario in, the miracle season and stories of Elisha and his prophecy and him being a prophet and living in that time span there. But that story has so many good teaching points in it that you just couldn't skip over it. There's scenarios and stories before and after this that shows Elisha working miracles through God and God working miracles through people who are connected with Elijah. But this one really stood out to me, man, because we started with it's a very familiar story, because if you remember back in 1 Kings, there was a dude by the name of Elijah who had kind of like the same scenario happening with this widow at Zarephath, and we talked about this, about how she was ready to die, and he told her, he said, "Take what you have, use it, bless the man of God first, and then you're going to just keep on making food throughout the rest of the drought." And that's what happened, and it came to pass, right? So in this instance, we're seeing kind of the same scenario take place again, but this time, a woman has been widowed, so it's kind of the same scenario, but her husband has left a debt behind. And the Bible says that this man is going to collect her 2 sons and use them as slaves. And she goes to Elisha and she says, "Hey, look, like, I need your help. I need you to give me some direction here as to what I need to do." And Elijah responds, and this is what really messes us up as Christians, Nick, because he responds in verse 2 and he says, "I wonder how I can be of help. Tell me, what do you have in your house?" Now, she's going to ask him for help. What do I do? She's going to respond here and says, "Nothing. Or I do have just a little bit of oil. It's not an excess amount. It's not like, it's not a money-making scheme. It's not a pyramid scheme, right? I was sitting here trying to think of that. Like, it's not a rainbow vacuum cleaner scheme or anything, It's one of these deals where it's like she's looking at her life. There's a need in her life. There is a pretty big gap, right there that she needs filled. And Elisha starts by answering her question with a question. And I talked about on Sunday about how sometimes we'll just flip plumb out whenever it comes to, like, if God was to answer our question, our need, with a question, how much more would we flip out? We just want direction. We want guidance. We want God. We want God to just step in and be like, hey, this is the moment. This is time. This is what you do. This is how you do it. This is when you do it. This is where you do it. We want all of that assurance from God. But, as I was talking about Sunday, that doesn't take faith. That just takes us listening, and trust me, I mean, we have a hard enough time with listening, but like in this moment, Elisha answers a question with a question, and he says, what do you have in your house? And whenever I read the word house there, it began to make me think, Nick, not just in the physical house, but even our temple, our house, our body. What do we have in our body that we can begin to give? And I think oftentimes, God wants us to kind of look on the inward whenever it comes to prayer request and whenever it comes to, Him working and moving in our lives. He wants us to look on the inward first before we go and try to make sense and talk to everybody else and ask questions and all of that good stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's, the whole story, the whole situation, here really dives deep into the, what do we have in our lives already? And I think, we get so distracted by the, I need this, I need that, I want this, I want that, in order to get what I need, in order to be where I want to be, I need more, I need this, I need that. Right. But, in this story, we kind of see an example of how, God has already given us everything that we need. Mm-hmm. We don't need more. We already have exactly what we need. And I think that even goes back to that whole thing where we talk about how, God always, God provides for us. God is always going to take care of us. Right. God's always going to give us what we need. Yeah. It goes back to that kind of fundamental understanding there, that we've talked about before in the past couple of episodes. Just understanding that, God has already given you what you need to succeed and to thrive. Right. But sometimes we get so distracted because, we compare ourselves to other people and we're like, well, they have this and they have to be more successful. They have to be more happier because they have this, they have this much money, this type of job, this type of relationship, whatever it may be. But we sometimes forget that, God created us in His image, and we already have everything that we need in order to succeed, in order to thrive. Mm-hmm. And this story here just kind of, I guess personifies that, or in a sense, it illustrates that. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. Right. It illustrates that, just saying that, this woman here, she already had everything that she needed. Yeah. But she was panicking, of course, because she didn't trust that God would use that to keep her safe, to keep her, healthy, to keep her alive. Yeah. I think we do that ourselves. We may have more. I mean, just imagine how much more we have than even this woman had. Right. And we're panicking. We're panicking. How am I going to make it? Yeah. So we're sitting here panicking. How am I going to make it? I don't know how I'm going to survive. But you're sitting here. You have a vehicle, you have a bed, you have sheets, you have running. Indoor plumbing. Something these people, God knows, they didn't have. 2 energy drinks. Exactly. 2 energy drinks that we're rocking right now. Right. We have so much more than even the woman in this story did. Absolutely. But God still took care of her. So why wouldn't He take care of you? Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's what the response of, well, what do you have in your house? And I would assume that would catch her off guard. I think it would catch us off guard if God responded and said, well, I know you have a need, but what do you have? I need a God. I've got a need. Well, what do you have in your house that you can use? I don't know. That's what I'm coming to you for, and it's like, I think God gives us situations like this and to reveal to us a lot of times that, like I was saying Sunday, the answer will not come from around you, but within you most of the time. And whenever that happens, you're just like, oh, it's like you have these moments where it brings it to the surface. It brings your survival to the surface. It brings your thought process to the surface. It brings your adrenaline to the surface. It brings your commitment to the surface. Moments like this really push you to be a person that's like you are. Now you're open to all options. You know what I'm saying? Beforehand, not so much, but now you're open to anything and everything. And so she says, I've got a little bit of oil, that's about all I have, and that's it. And so, Elisha answers her from that, and he says, so here's what you do. He says, I want you to go out into the neighborhood. I want you to knock on doors, and I want you to ask for all the jugs, the bowls. I want you to ask for all that stuff, and I want you to bring it home. And the way that God broke it down to me was that if we want to see it, quote unquote, come to pass in our lives, whatever it is, whoever's listening to this today, tonight, tomorrow, whatever the case is,
next week, whenever you hear this, and it came to pass, I want you to put your moment, your need in that position. Put your need in that position. Like, what is it that you need? Do you need saving? Do you need a financial blessing? Do you need a healing? Do you need your family put back together? Do you need, what is it that you need? Do you need deliverance? Do you need, whatever it is? And at that moment, it says, that go out, ask for the jugs, ask for the bowls, ask for whatever, and bring them back home. Now, the way God broke it down to me, Nick, was that, there's two ways. If we're going to see things come to pass in our life, there's two things that we have to do that's important. Number one is humility. We have to be humble. We have to be humble first and foremost to admit that we have a problem, that we have a lack of something in our lives. And, it really bumfuzzles me that we come into church most Sundays pretty proper, put together, looking good, looking nice, putting on our Sunday best, but we also put on our Sunday fronts as well. We have the smiles, and we, like we didn't threaten to kill
church
our
masks.
Right, yeah, like we didn't threaten to kill our kids on the way to service, or like we didn't fight with our spouses, or like we, like whatever. Like we come into church and it's like, we sit down and we're like, oh, everything's good, everything's great, everything's grand, and it's like, God cannot help you. People cannot help you. Nothing can help you if you do not come forth and say, I have a problem. Help me. Help. Like we have to be humble. And so in those moments where, Elisha responded and said, I need you to go to these homes, knock on these doors, and ask for bowls and ask for jugs and things like that. That is humility. That is you going, you know what? Like I'm at my limit. I'm now knocking on doors and I'm asking my neighbors for help. And that's exactly what church, Nick, is designed to do, right? Like we are designed to walk into this place and the people that have needs, whatever the need is, like that's what we are supposed to be, those friendly neighbors that go, oh, you need a bowl? You need a jug? Let me help you carry. Well, yeah, I got 2 or 3 here. You can, like, that's what it's all about, and that's how we get help in community, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also understanding, that, we as a society has grown so selfish, and I know we've talked about that as well, but just understanding that, all that we have is not ours. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we, as an everyday Christian, we need to remind ourselves of, is that the things that we have, we didn't earn. The things that we have, they don't matter.
Right.
The things that we have are all gifts from God. That the blanket I have is a gift from God. The car that I drive is a gift from God.
Right.
My ability to wake up and move every morning is a gift from God.
Right.
The house that you have, the family that you have, the money that you have in the bank, whatever it may be, all of that is a gift from God. So understanding that we as Christians are supposed to share that. That's the whole point. Is we're supposed to be selfless. We're supposed to say, hey, what's your need? Let me help you with that.
Yeah.
And understand and know that if you give what you have, God is going to give back to you. So that way, and it's. I think I remember back. We did an illustration one Sunday where there was a few of us standing up in stage in kind of like a circle,
right?
Where we just constantly kept
pass stuff around.
Absolutely,
pass
stuff around, just saying, hey, I have a need. Here you go. Okay, now I have lack of. So now the other person who has an abundance of is going to give to me, and it's going to continue in a cycle. And that's something we need to remember as Christians, is that number one, the stuff that we have does not belong to us, and that number two, the stuff that we have is supposed to be shared, and we learned that in kindergarten. Sharing is caring.
Right.
We learned that a long time ago. So we just need to understand as an everyday Christian that the stuff we have isn't ours, and it's meant to be used to help other people out.
Right. Absolutely, man. And that's what, there's something that really just, like I said, whenever he says go, go to your neighbors, go to the homes, go to this, go to that, like go and ask, like that humility that's there is something that we fight, because pride will cheat you out of more blessings than anything will. And whenever we can look and admit that we have a problem, we have an issue, we can go to people, we can go to God, we can go we can go to those people that are going to help us. I mean, whenever we can do that, we understand that we're not in the battle on our own, that there's people fighting with us, that there's people that'll help us, and that first and foremost that our answer is going to come from God and God alone, but that He will provide situations and people around us that will help us, get to that point as well. And so, whenever she was knocking on the doors and getting these bowls and collecting these jugs and bringing them in, like, that's humility at its finest right there. She's struggling to survive. She's trying her best just to make it to where, her sons are not, put into place for her debt at that point. And so she locks the door. That Elisha tells her, he says, "Go in, get the bowls, go and lock the door, get away from everybody, and then just begin to pour the oil in the jugs, in the bowls, whatever." That's what he tells her to do. Now the second thing is that if you go back and you read, she says, "Well, I have a little bit of oil." Now he says, "Get as many bowls as you can," but she only has a little bit of oil, Nick. And the second thing that God really broke down to me was that, not only do you have to be humble, but you have to be faithful, man. You have to be faithful. If you only have a little bit of oil, but God tells you to get 50 bowls, it does not make sense. I get it. I understand it, man. And I know, like, I've been a Christian since I was 16. I'm 37. That's 21 years. And I've been pastoring. Man, I've been preaching since I was like 22, 23. I'm 37. Again, like as I stated, we've been in fruition for 5 total years. It's like, God still, amazes me at things that he does sometimes, and it's like, and I still, even as a 21-year Christian, pastor, preacher, leader, teacher, whatever you want to say, Christian, all of that good stuff, man. There's still things that he says that he talks to me about, and I'll be like in this woman's position, and it's like where he's like, "Get 50 bowls, Keenan." I'm like, I ain't got enough oil to pour in 2. Why do I need 50? Well, it's not the fact of that you're going to pour into 50 bowls. He's going to multiply it to make it work so you can pour into 50 bowls. But I have to be faithful over what God has told me to do with what he's given me to begin with. And that's where the answer truly comes from, is that, like what I was talking about on Sunday, and I was telling people, like, and I don't want to talk about, I hardly ever talk about money in sermons, because, I've told people from the very beginning, God's going to bless regardless whether they give or not. God will just bring some random stranger off the street and he'll bless, if nobody else will. Like, that's not the point. But what I'm saying is that, if you have $10 in your pocket and that's all you have, and God tells you to give that 10, first off, like you said before, God gave you that 10, first off. Second off, what if God is telling you to get rid of that 10 because he's going to bless you with 100? You got to be faithful with that 10. And if you're faithful with that 10, God will bless you with that 100. Now, again, I'm not, this is not a picturesque tithing moment here where I'm trying to get you to give 10 so you can get 100 in return. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that, if you take that mindset of, what, this is what God's given me. God gave it to me. God can take it away. We understand that, but God can also multiply it and use it as well. And that's what we really have to get the mindset of, Nick, is that no matter how big or small it is, what God has given us, if we're faithful over it, God will still take it and multiply it to make it more. And so, put into context maybe even a little bit, like what do you think this woman was thinking as she's just pouring this quote-unquote little bit of oil into every bowl that her sons are bringing her? Like, what would your mindset be?
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine, just like total shock, just sitting there, like, what is, like, oh, did it just fill up that?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one?
right, like, yeah, like,
one? Like, I get, it's just one of those things that, like, it's like, if you were up here on stage, I can just imagine, if you were up here on stage doing that, if God was like, "Hey, I want you to take this half-empty water bottle and pour it into 30 jugs up on stage." Like, I can imagine everyone in the audience just looking with total amazement as it was happening. Like, mouth open, like, to me, that's one of those moments that you're like, okay, I doubted who God was, but now I don't. Like, I'm seeing something crazy happen in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just one of those, like, awe-inspiring, fear of God moments where you're just like, oh my gosh, he is real. He does things. He provides things. He takes care of me.
Right.
And it's just, to me, I can imagine, her being in that situation just in total awe and total shock and total, just, humility. I think, like, where she was in her mind, mind, think, oh, this is never going to work. He's just over here saying this, and, getting all big, high and mighty in her head. I can't believe he's thinking this, whatever, I'll do it. I'll humor him. But then as she was seeing this happen in front of her eyes, it humbled her down to say, oh my gosh, God is real. God is good. God is a provider. And I think that's something, we see it when something amazing happens in our lives. It's just a reminder of, just how good God is to us. We sit there and struggle. We're reminded when we finally get that, and so it came to pass moment, we're sitting there in awe of what God has done, and reminded of all the times that we doubted him in the process. Right. How many times were you sitting there thinking, oh God, this is never going to happen? How many times did you let the enemy beat you up and say, this isn't going to happen. You're never going to get in the relationship you want. You're never going to get the job that you want. You're never going to get the pay that you want. You're never going to get the church that you want. You're never going to get in that, whatever it may be, whatever it is you're struggling with. You've been told time and time again, the enemy has tried to trip you up and say, hey, it's not going to happen. Right. But then you get that moment where you were faithful and you continue to pray, you continue to praise, you continue to trust and have faith in God. Yep. And then you get that moment and you're just sit there almost awestruck, and right. You may be bawling your eyes out thinking God, praising God, whatever it may be. You're just going to be sitting there in total amazement of what God has done for you. And, knowing that, you didn't deserve it, knowing that, you didn't have that much to put into it to begin with, but God still gave you greater than you expected.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, that's really the mindset that it's like, if we continue to just be faithful over what he's given us, that's what the Bible says. If we're faithful over a little, he'll make us rulers over much one day. I mean, like that's what the word says. And so, this woman, she just keeps pouring and keeps pouring and keeps pouring and keeps pouring up until a point where she tells her sons, bring me another bowl. And they look at her and they go, there's no more bowls. And I can just imagine, Nick, like you go from having just a little bit of oil. I can imagine bowls sitting around that kitchen and sitting around that living room and just sitting in the floor and sitting on the table. And, and it's almost like you look around and go, look what God has done. Look at what God has done. We used to sing a song, man, old song I can remember back in the day. Look what the Lord has done. Look what the Lord has done. He healed my body. He healed my mind. He saved me just in time, man. It's like, it's just like, we sit in amazement sometimes, and it's like, how much more could we sit in amazement as Christians, as leaders, as whatever, pastors and podcast hosts and whatever. Like, how much more could we sit in amazement if we were just able to steward what we have, and just be good stewards of it and watch God, as we pour out to God, watch God multiply what we're pouring out. Like, it would be amazing to be able to do something like that. And so this woman looks around and she's like, oh, there's no more bowls. Like, what does that mean? So she goes and tells Elijah, like, hey, look, like, I filled up all the bowls. Like, I went and got as many as I could. I filled them all up. It's amazing. I don't know what's going on. And Elijah says, you know what? Here's the last part, man. You go sell the bowls. You go sell the oil. And not only will it be enough debt or enough to pay off your debt, but you know what? You're going to have a little bit extra as well. Now, here's the thing that really got me, Nick, was the fact of that God knew how many bowls that they were going to collect. He knew how many bowls it would take to collect and to fill. And yet, he stretched the oil to fill the bowls. He put the people in place to give the bowls. He put the people in place to buy the bowls. Mm-hmm. And then he also supplied the need, not only the need, but past the need as well. All because of humility and faithfulness. Humility and faithfulness. Nick, as we draw this thing to a close tonight, I try to put it into your own words. Don't copy my words, but try to put it into your own words, my man. How you can literally have that, and it came to pass moment.
So yeah, I mean, it's again, we talk so many times on the podcast about the different things that we struggle with, from time to time, not as just a Christian, but as an everyday living, breathing human being. In the world that we live in today, there's so much going on that's stressful, that's anxiety inducing, that's depressive. We deal and we struggle with a lot of different things, and as a Christian, it's our job to maintain a level of faith in that God, and we talked about it before, that God is going to take care of you. No matter what weapon is formed against you, it's not going to prosper. God, right. If God provides for the birds and the trees, He's going to provide for you.
Yeah.
We talked about when Elijah was given food by ravens. God provides for you. God is going to take care of your needs, and we've seen it time and time again. And I think it's just important for us to realize that not only is God is going to take care of our needs if we're humble enough to accept help from people, to ask for help from people, to talk to people about our needs and to our struggles. If we're humble enough to walk in church on Sunday and not be put together and not look like we just got off of trading stock on Wall Street, if we're willing to walk into church, just
I feel like that's stressful though, right?
Oh yeah, it's stressful.
Okay,
but that's kind of their fault. No, but anyway, just understanding that God is going to take care of it. And I think we need to understand that we deal with and we struggle with a lot of things, but I think if you're a Christian, I think it's almost impossible for you not to have had at least one of those God has provided moments, where it's like, okay, something in my life that I've struggled with has come to pass and I've received healing from it. I've received freedom from it. My chains have been broken. I'm able to say that I'm not dealing or struggling with that anymore. I'm able to say that I've gotten an answer to this prayer or that prayer. I think, as a Christian, you have had at least one of those moments. And if that, if anything, just that salvation moment of yours, that salvation story that you have, that in and of itself is a moment that we're talking about here. So I think, as an everyday Christian, we need to look back on those moments and understand that if God did it once, He'll do it again. If you're struggling with something else right now, understanding that, through humility and through, patience, well, God knows that's a horrible thing to think about, but through humility and patience and faith and trusting in God, understanding that, maybe you have a job right now and it doesn't make sense, you're not making ends meet, it doesn't pay as much as you think, but, you feel like God led you to that moment, God led you to that situation, and you're fearful and you're anxious about it, but just understand that, God wouldn't have given you that if it wasn't going to work out. And again, we've talked about, even like myself is something I've struggled with, taking a job that may be a little bit less than I've had before, but again, understanding that God put that in front of me, God wanted me to go that way, take that direction. Yeah. Just understanding that, even though I struggle with the anxiety, how am I going to make the ends meet? Like, I was already struggling beforehand. How is it going to work out now?
Right.
Just trusting that, God has handled me. He's gotten me through everything up to this point, and He's going to do the same thing. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If He took care of you yesterday, He's going to take care of you tomorrow, just like He took care of you today.
Right.
So just understand that those moments, those it came to pass moments, they happen to everybody. There's something that, we've struggled with for a long time, and God finally gives us freedom from it. And we have to look at that time frame in between the struggle and the aha moment, the it came to pass moment. Look at that time frame as a testimony, as they say, hey, I struggled with this. It was hard. It was difficult, but I kept the faith. I held true, and I trusted God with it. And eventually, I got to that moment where He provided everything that I'd been wanting, plus some.
Right.
Maybe you wanted a relationship, and you struggled for a very long time with wanted a relationship with a godly person, and finally you get in a relationship with somebody, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's greater than I ever could have hoped for or dreamed for. Mm-hmm. Maybe you struggled with joblessness, and you were praying for a good job, praying for a great job, and then eventually God gave you a job better than you ever thought you'd have.
Right.
So you need to make sure that as an everyday Christian, you're using those moments as testimonies to help build up other people who are in those moments and those struggling moments where they're like, I don't see the end. The end is nowhere in sight. This doesn't make sense. I'm confused. I'm scared. I'm anxious. You need to make sure that you're using those moments as testimonies to walk up to someone and say, hey, I was in that boat with you at some point, and, let me tell you how I made it through. Let me tell you how I made it out.
Right.
We need to make sure that we're using those moments as testimonies because, there are a lot of people out there struggling every day with something.
Absolutely.
And we've all struggled with things, and God has allowed us to struggle in those situations so that one day we can help someone else get out of those situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just making sure that we're understanding and using those moments as testimonies, and that we're able to trust God in the process even when it doesn't make sense. I think that's been a running kind of ideal that we've been talking about here recently in the past few weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say at least 3 or 4 weeks, man.
Yeah, so I know just keep that stuff in mind. Again, if you haven't listened to the last few podcasts, go back and listen to those. If you're really struggling with something like we've been talking about, go back and listen to those because I do believe that they'd help you out at least a little bit. At least I hope and pray that they do.
Right, absolutely.
But hopefully that'll help you out a little bit.
Absolutely. How'd that energy drink feel, man? Is that...
I'm only about halfway full. So,
I'm glad you didn't drink all of it.
We're 150 milligrams.
Oh my goodness, man! So again, if there's anything that you could take away from this episode, it's the simple fact of that: as long as you have a little bit of oil, a little bit of something in your life that you can use, that you can pour out to God, God will take it, He will multiply it, and He will fulfill needs within your life. This is Pastor Keenan and my sidekick Nick. Again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Everyday Christian. And again, follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, www.fruitionchurchky.org. You can go check out all the situations on there. Tell your friends, tell your family about this podcast, and let's get the word out that we're just taking the Bible and applying it to everyday life and just trying to help everybody out. We thank you guys so much for tuning in, for downloading, and we'll see you next time. We love you.